Your project timelines have been consistently problematic, and client feedback indicates dissatisfaction with your creative direction. I sat across from Nate, my pulse quickening as he flipped through my performance review with practiced disappointment. The conference room felt smaller than usual, the glass walls suddenly too transparent as colleagues glanced in while passing. 6 months of exhausting work reduced to a series of alleged failures. I'm particularly concerned about the West Side campaign, he continued, not looking up from his papers. The execution lacked the innovation we expect. My mouth went dry. The West Side campaign had doubled their customer engagement, something the client had personally called to thank me for last week, but they specifically mentioned I started. Please, let me finish, Nate interrupted, holding up his hand. I have several examples here. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Normally, I'd ignore it during something as important as a performance review, but something made me discreetly check the screen while Nate shuffled through more papers. Unknown number. Don't react. Your boss is recording everything. Be careful what you say. I controlled my expression, looking back up to find Nate watching me intently. I smiled apologetically and slipped the phone away, my mind racing. His company phone lay face down on the table, unusual for someone who typically kept it in his suit pocket. As he resumed speaking, I noticed his posture seemed off, slightly angled as though hiding something beneath his blazer. Your teammates have expressed concerns about your collaboration skills, he continued. Would you like to share your thoughts on your relationships with other designers? The question hung in the air, oddly specific. Fishing for criticism of my colleagues? I remembered the text and chose my words carefully. I value everyone on the team, I said blandly. We all bring different strengths. Nate's mouth tightened almost imperceptibly. He shifted in his chair, and I caught a glimpse of something small and black beneath his jacket. Let's discuss Alex's recent presentation. You seemed displeased. Another trap. Alex had presented my concept without attribution after Nate reassigned my project to him last minute. I thought Alex did an excellent job with the presentation, I said evenly, ignoring the heat rising in my neck. Nate's eyes narrowed briefly before he checked his watch. I need to step out for a moment. Please review these improvement metrics while I'm gone. He slid a folder across the table and left, closing the door behind him. The silence pressed against my ears. I waited 3 seconds, then 5 before moving. Something about the plant on the credenza had caught my eye, a tiny reflection where there shouldn't be one. I approached cautiously and discovered a small black recording device nestled among the leaves, its red light blinking steadily. My heart hammered against my ribs. Why was he recording me secretly? And who had sent that warning text? A soft click came from the door handle. I barely made it back to my seat before Nate returned, a fresh coffee in hand. Now, where were we? He asked, settling back into his chair. Ah, yes, your performance improvement plan. I'll need you to sign this acknowledgement that we've discussed your areas of concern. He slid a document toward me, dense with text highlighting supposed failures and mediocre results, none of which reflected reality. This wasn't just an unfair review. It was a paper trail designed to push me out. As I stared at the signature line, a chilling realization washed over me. I wasn't the first, and I wouldn't be the last, unless someone stopped him. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you'll want to know what happens next. My name is Tess Everhart, and until 6 months ago, I was known for my innovative approach to visual storytelling. I'd built a reputation in the design world through dedication and creativity, talents that caught Nate Pike's attention when he recruited me to breathe new life into his struggling design group. The first 2 weeks were everything I'd hoped for. My new colleagues welcomed me warmly, particularly Olivia, who had been with the company for 5 years. She gave me the unofficial orientation, showing me the best lunch spots and warning me about the temperamental printer on the 3rd floor. We're so glad you're here, she'd said, her smile genuine. We need fresh energy after everything that's happened. What do you mean? I'd asked. We lost 3 designers in 2 months. Talented people just left. Nate said they couldn't handle the pressure, but she'd looked around before lowering her voice. It felt sudden, like something wasn't right. I should have paid more attention to that warning, but I was too eager to prove myself. My first project was for a local theater company needing to attract younger audiences. I worked late nights, creating a campaign that blended classical elements with modern aesthetics. When I presented it to the team, the reception was enthusiastic. "This is exactly what they need," Olivia had exclaimed. Even shy Ben from the digital team spoke up. "The interconnection between physical and digital touchpoints is brilliant. I felt I'd found my place." Until Nate stepped in. "It's a start," he said, arms crossed. "But it lacks depth. The execution is elementary." The room's energy deflated instantly. My colleagues avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their notebooks. "Perhaps," he continued, "we should consider a different direction. Ben, why don't you take a pass at the digital components? Olivia, you rework the print materials. Tess, observe how a more experienced team approaches this." I was effectively removed from my own project. When the campaign launched 2 weeks later, actually identical to my original design, the client was thrilled. In the company-wide email announcing its success, Nate praised the team effort led by our veterans. I told myself it was just this once, that I needed to earn my place, but a pattern quickly emerged. My concept for a sustainable product line was deemed too ambitious in our meeting, only to appear in Nate's presentation to executives the following week, presented as his brainchild. My social media strategy for a struggling client doubled their engagement within days, yet Nate explained to the client that he had guided the team toward a more effective approach than initially proposed. Each time I created something valuable, Nate would find fault in front of others, then repurpose my work as his own, or attribute it to someone else. When I attempted to speak up, he'd interrupt with, "Team success over individual recognition, Tess. That's how we operate here." But it wasn't just me. I noticed how Olivia, once confident and outspoken, had grown hesitant to share ideas. Ben rarely spoke in meetings anymore. New designer Mia started strong, but within weeks was second-guessing every decision. 2 months in, I overheard Mia crying in the supply room. "I don't understand what I'm doing wrong," she whispered to Olivia. "He said my work was substandard, but last week he called the same approach innovative." "That's just how it is with Nate," Olivia replied, her voice hollow. "You're not crazy. Your work is good." That night, I couldn't sleep. Was I imagining things? Was I simply not as talented as I thought? The questions circled my mind like hungry wolves. The next morning, I arrived early to find Nate already in his office, door ajar. He was on a video call, unaware of my presence. "The new designer has no idea what she's created," he laughed to someone on screen. "The campaign concept will position us perfectly for the industry awards. Keep them desperate for validation, and they'll produce twice as much while accepting minimal recognition." I froze, breath caught in my throat. He was talking about my work for our biggest client, the one he'd criticized publicly before taking to the executive team as his own vision. "The trick," he continued, "is to keep them isolated. If they compare notes, the game's over. But people are surprisingly reluctant to admit when they feel inadequate." I retreated silently, my mind reeling with the confirmation of what I'd suspected but couldn't prove. This wasn't incompetent management. It was deliberate manipulation. Over the next weeks, I watched more carefully. Designers who questioned Nate found their projects suddenly disappointing clients. Quiet acceptance earned tiny raises despite brilliant contributions. 3 talented colleagues had quit before my arrival, crushed under constant negativity. 2 others had accepted lesser roles, believing themselves inadequate for the work they once excelled at. Nate had built his reputation by claiming others' creativity while methodically destroying their self-worth. The executives trusted only his assessment of our abilities, never seeing the true dynamics at play. I began documenting everything, saving emails, recording meetings with notification to all participants, keeping dated copies of my work before and after Nate's input. I wasn't sure what I'd do with the evidence, but I knew I needed to protect myself. Then came the industry showcase announcement. Each year, design teams presented their best work to leaders across the field. Nate predictably appointed himself to present our collective efforts. His crowning achievement would be taking credit for the entire department's transformation under his leadership. As the showcase approached, The pressure intensified. Nate became more critical, more demanding. Designers worked weekends without recognition. Mia resigned, citing personal reasons after a particularly brutal critique of work that a client had already approved enthusiastically. The morning of my performance review, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside was a single business card with a phone number and the words, "Former assistant, call if needed." I didn't have time to contemplate this mysterious message before Nate summoned me to the conference room, setting the stage for the conversation that began this story, the one where an unknown number warned me about being recorded. After signing the improvement plan under duress, I returned to my desk, mind churning with possibilities and fears. Who had sent that text? Why was Nate secretly recording me? And most importantly, what was I going to do about it? The business card seemed to burn in my pocket. With shaking fingers, I dialed the number. "I've been waiting for your call," a woman's voice answered. "My name is Dana. I was Nate's executive assistant for 3 years, and you're not the first person he's tried to destroy." The line crackled with Dana's steady breathing as I processed her words. I sat at my desk, hunched over my phone, keeping my voice low. "He records people?" I asked. "That's just one of his tactics," Dana replied. "Nate provokes negative comments about colleagues or pushes for admissions of imagined failings to use against you later. I watched him do it dozens of times, but I never had proof. Until now?" "Until you," she said. "Listen carefully. Nate destroys talented people systematically. First, he isolates them. Then, he erodes their confidence through constant criticism while simultaneously harvesting their best ideas. Finally, he creates a paper trail of performance issues before pushing them out or making them quit." My throat tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're different. You're documenting things. I've heard whispers from Olivia." A pause. "And because I carry the guilt of staying silent for 3 years while watching careers crumble." I glanced toward Nate's office, where he was now laughing on a call, gesturing expansively. The same performance he'd given when I first interviewed. "What exactly does he want from this recording?" I asked. "He needs you to say something damaging about yourself or others. He'll edit it, present it to leadership as evidence of your negative attitude, and build his case for termination. Or worse, make you so miserable you quit, believing you're the problem." My fingers curled into a fist. "That won't happen." "Good. But be careful. Nate doesn't just take ideas. He takes spirits, souls. I've seen brilliant designers leave the industry altogether after believing his lies about their abilities." After we disconnected, I sat motionless, staring at the embossed business card. Dana had given me her private number, promising to share what she knew, but emphasized I needed to protect myself first. I looked up to see Olivia watching me, concern etched across her face. She approached cautiously. "Bad review?" she asked quietly. "Apparently, I'm on thin ice," I replied, studying her reaction. Something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, perhaps. "Join me for lunch? Away from here?" 20 minutes later, we sat in a small park 3 blocks from the office. Olivia unwrapped her sandwich but didn't eat. "I shouldn't say anything," she began, picking at the bread crust. "But watching what's happening to you, it's like seeing history repeat itself. With you?" She nodded, eyes downcast. "I was like you once. Ambitious, confident, full of ideas. Nate hired me personally, called me a rare talent." Her laugh held no humor. 6 months in, I couldn't make a design decision without second-guessing myself 20 times. What happened? The Clarion Project. My concept won us the account, our biggest ever. During development, Nate criticized every element publicly, while privately sending my original designs to the client. At the launch party, he accepted an industry award for innovation, while I stood in the background, believing I'd contributed nothing of value. My heart sank. "Why did you stay?" By then, I believed no one else would hire me. She finally met my gaze. "That's his real genius, Tess. He doesn't just steal your work. He convinces you it wasn't good in the first place." Back at the office, I found Ben waiting by my desk, nervously adjusting his glasses. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just checking about your portion of the showcase presentation," he said, louder than necessary. Then he slipped me a note before walking away. The paper read, Nate asked me to report back on your attitude after your review. Not the first time. Be careful. The web of manipulation extended further than I'd realized. Nate wasn't just pitting us against each other. He was creating a surveillance system where everyone felt compelled to monitor everyone else. That afternoon, I received an email requesting all my files for the showcase presentation for formatting consistency. The deadline was tomorrow, giving me no time to document changes between my original work and whatever would ultimately be presented. I forwarded the email to my personal account before replying that I'd deliver everything by morning. Then I worked late into the night, creating 2 versions, one for Nate and a secured backup of my original designs. The next morning, Nate called an emergency team meeting. His expression was grave as we assembled. I've just received concerning feedback from the showcase organizers, he announced. They've implemented new guidelines requiring all presentations to clearly attribute work to specific team members. The room remained silent, though I noticed several designers exchanging glances. This creates a logistical challenge, Nate continued, pacing slowly. But I've developed a solution. Each of you will prepare a brief summary of your contributions, which I'll incorporate. This will satisfy the requirement while maintaining our cohesive narrative. It was masterful. He'd found a way to appear transparent while controlling exactly how much credit each person received. When are these attributions due? I asked. By end of day, Nate replied. I'll need tonight to integrate everything before tomorrow's event. An impossible deadline, meaning he could edit our contributions however he wished, and no one would see the final presentation until it was live. As the meeting dispersed, my phone buzzed with a text from Dana. Need to talk. Found something. Cafe across street. 15 minutes. I made an excuse about needing supplies and slipped out. Dana was already waiting at a corner table, a leather portfolio beside her coffee. You're not the first person to document Nate's behavior, she said without preamble, but you might be the first with a chance to expose it. She slid a flash drive across the table. These are exit interviews from 8 designers who left in the past 2 years. Human Resources conducted them as standard procedure, but Nate convinced the director to mark them confidential, claiming disgruntled employees were making baseless accusations. How did you get these? I asked, not touching the drive. I was responsible for filing HR documentation. I never deleted my copies. Her eyes darted to the window. I was too afraid to use them while working there. But these stories, they're all the same. Designers describe watching their confidence and creativity systematically dismantled. This could help, but it's still their word against his. He would claim they were underperformers making excuses. Dana smiled thinly. That's why I also included the original project files I could access, showing design work Nate claimed credit for alongside proof of who really created it. My heart raced. This is exactly what I've been gathering. There's more, Dana continued. Last year's performance reviews compared to actual client feedback. Several instances where Nate told executives a project was struggling while telling clients the exact opposite. And 3 cases where he took designers' concepts, rejected them publicly, then presented them as his own solutions weeks later. I stared at the flash drive, now understanding its weight. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Dana's expression clouded. He threatened me. Not directly. Nate's too smart for that. But he made it clear that speaking against him would end my career. He has powerful connections. She pushed the drive closer. Use this however you need to. I'm leaving the industry anyway. I can't ask you to sacrifice. You didn't ask. I'm offering. She stood to leave. One last thing. Check the files on Olivia's Clarion project. Nate didn't just take credit. He deliberately sabotaged her confidence because she was being considered for promotion above him. The executive emails tell the whole story. Back at the office, I found a message from Olivia asking to meet in the archive room. When I arrived, Ben was with her, along with Riley from the digital team. We need to talk about tomorrow, Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. About the showcase. And about Nate, added Ben. Riley locked the door. We know what he's doing to you because he did it to all of us. We stayed silent too long. For the next hour, they shared their stories. Ben had developed the user experience framework that won 3 design awards, all accepted by Nate. Riley had created the interactive platform that doubled client engagement. which Nate presented as his vision at last year's showcase. And Olivia. Olivia had lost a career-defining opportunity when Nate convinced executives she wasn't ready for advancement. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you're fighting back," Ben said simply. "And we want to help." That night, I barely slept. The showcase loomed just hours away, with industry leaders and our entire executive team attending. It would be Nate's moment of triumph, unless someone stopped him. I arrived early, watching from a corner as the venue filled with designers, executives, and media representatives. Our company's display stood prominently at center stage, ready for Nate's presentation. He moved through the crowd confidently, shaking hands, laughing at just the right moments. Our team huddled nearby, nervous energy pulsing between us. Nate had sent the final presentation deck that morning, a masterpiece of subtle manipulation. Our contributions appeared technically credited but positioned as minor elements within his overarching vision. 10 minutes, everyone," called the event coordinator. Nate beckoned us closer. "Remember, this is about showcasing our collective achievement," he said, his expression earnest. "We rise together." As he turned away, Olivia squeezed my hand. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered. I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm. "Just be ready." The lights dimmed as Nate took the stage, welcomed by enthusiastic applause. The massive screen behind him illuminated with our company logo. "Today," he began, "I'm honored to present a body of work that represents the pinnacle of collaborative design thinking, a philosophy I've cultivated within our team over years of leadership." The first slide appeared, a stunning visualization of our combined projects, carefully arranged to suggest a single creative vision. His vision. "While you'll see individual contributions noted," he continued smoothly, "what's most remarkable is how these elements form a unified approach to client challenges, a methodology I've developed through years of industry experience." From my position at the back of the room, I caught the eye of our CEO, seated in the front row. She smiled approvingly at Nate, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Nate clicked to advance his presentation, but instead of his next carefully crafted slide, the screen changed to a video recording. Nate in his office, speaking candidly. The new designer has no idea what she's created. His recorded voice echoed through the hall. "Keep them desperate for validation, and they'll produce twice as much while accepting minimal recognition." A gasp rippled through the audience. Nate froze mid-gesture, his expression shifting from confusion to horror as he recognized his own words. "What?" he began, frantically clicking his remote. The video continued, showing a series of clips. Nate taking credit for Olivia's Clarion concept in a private executive meeting. Nate dismissing Ben's framework publicly before presenting it as his own to clients. Nate instructing Dana to exclude Riley from a crucial presentation after using Riley's designs. Nate lunged toward the control booth, but security, alerted in advance about a potential technical disruption, blocked his path. "This is unauthorized," he shouted. "Someone is sabotaging." "Actually," I called, stepping forward from the back, "everything you're seeing is authorized and legally obtained. These are recordings from official meetings where multiple parties were notified of documentation, communications sent through company channels, and statements made in public office spaces." The audience turned toward me as I walked slowly down the center aisle, a tablet in my hands. "What you're witnessing isn't sabotage," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's truth. For years, this man has systematically claimed credit for others' creativity, while deliberately undermining their confidence and career advancement." Nate's face contorted with rage. "These clips are taken out of context. This is a vindictive attack by an employee facing performance issues." I reached the stage and turned to face the crowd. Is it vindictive when 8 different designers report identical experiences over 2 years? Is it taken out of context when performance reviews contradict client feedback? Is it one disgruntled employee when an entire design team has documentation? The screen behind us shifted to a grid of faces, former team members ready to testify to their experiences. Below each face appeared comparison images, their original designs alongside Nate's visionary concepts presented months later. Our CEO rose from her seat, expression unreadable. "Mr. Pike, is this accurate?" "Absolutely not," Nate sputtered. This is a coordinated, because, she interrupted. I'm looking at designs I personally complimented you on last quarter. Designs you specifically told me were your conceptual direction. The room had grown deathly quiet. Executives exchanged glances. Industry peers whispered among themselves. If I may, I said, addressing the CEO directly. There's something more important than exposing one person's deception. I tapped my tablet, and the screen changed again, this time displaying a beautiful mosaic of our team's work, each piece properly attributed to its creator. This is the true legacy of our design group. Not a single vision, but a tapestry of individual brilliance that deserves recognition. One by one, our team members stood. Olivia, Ben, Riley, even quiet Zoe from production. Together, we formed a line across the front of the room, a visual counterpoint to Nate's isolated position on stage. Security approached Nate as the CEO gestured toward the exit. His face drained of color as he realized what was happening. He made one last desperate attempt. These people were nothing before I shaped them, he shouted. Look at their work before me. Mediocre at best. I built their careers. The words hung in the air, damning in their arrogance. As Nate was escorted out, whispers erupted into conversations. Industry leaders approached our team members, examining the properly credited work with new appreciation. Our executives huddled urgently, occasionally glancing our way. The showcase continued without Nate, transformed into something unexpected, a celebration of individual contributions within collaborative frameworks. Our team, for the first time, stood proudly behind their work, accepting questions and compliments without deflection or doubt. But as the event concluded, uncertainty lingered beneath our triumph. We had exposed Nate, but at what cost to the company? To our own futures? Had we traded one form of career suicide for another? The CEO approached our group, her expression inscrutable. I need all of you in the conference room tomorrow morning at 8, she said simply before walking away. That night, we gathered at a quiet bar, emotionally exhausted but unable to separate. We had tied our fates together in a way that couldn't be undone. What happens tomorrow? Ben asked, voicing everyone's fear. I looked around at these talented people who had risked everything to reclaim their worth. I don't know, I admitted. But whatever comes next, we face it honestly, together. None of us could have predicted what awaited us in that conference room the next morning, or how completely our professional lives were about to transform. The next morning arrived with a weight of finality. Our team gathered in the hallway outside the conference room, exchanging nervous glances but few words. Whatever happened now, we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. No regrets, Olivia whispered, squeezing my hand as the CEO's assistant waved us in. The room was already occupied. Our CEO, Valerie, sat at the head of the table. Beside her were the chief operating officer, the head of human resources, and two people I didn't recognize. The atmosphere felt heavy, formal. Please sit, Valerie said, gesturing to the empty chairs. We arranged ourselves along the table, a united front despite our anxiety. The room remained silent until everyone was settled. Valerie cleared her throat. Yesterday was unprecedented. In my 15 years leading this company, I've never witnessed anything like it. My chest tightened. Here it came. The corporate damage control. The need to protect the company's reputation over justice. Before we discuss consequences, Valerie continued, I want to address something directly. She leaned forward, making eye contact with each of us. I failed you. The statement hung in the air, unexpected and disarming. As CEO, creating a workplace where talent thrives is my responsibility. Somehow, I allowed a culture where one person could systematically undermine others while ascending through deception. She turned to one of the strangers, a woman with silver-streaked hair and keen eyes. This is Audrey Lane, an independent investigator specializing in workplace ethics. Last night, after reviewing initial evidence, I asked her to examine everything thoroughly. Audrey? The investigator opened a sleek laptop. The documentation provided is extensive and damning. Email trails, recorded meetings, comparative design files, exit interviews. They form a clear pattern of creative theft and psychological manipulation spanning 3 years. Valerie nodded grimly. And the legal implications? The second stranger, a sharp-featured man in a charcoal suit, spoke up. I'm Patrick Welsh, outside counsel. While the company faces potential liability for allowing this situation to develop, the individuals who came forward acted within legal boundaries. Their documentation methods were appropriate, and the public revelation occurred in a professional context relevant to the misconduct. Valerie absorbed this information before addressing us again. Here's where we stand. Nate Pike's employment has been terminated, effective immediately. His final paycheck will reflect no bonus or outstanding commissions. Security has already cleared his office. A ripple of tension released across our side of the table. Not celebration, exactly, but vindication. But removing one person doesn't solve a systemic problem, Valerie continued. Which brings us to restructuring. My stomach dropped. Restructuring usually meant layoffs. Our design division requires new leadership, transparent, collaborative, and ethical. Someone who values individual contribution within team success. She paused, her gaze settling on our group. Olivia, your portfolio from the past 5 years is exceptional. Would you consider stepping into a director role? Olivia's sharp intake of breath was audible. Yes, absolutely. Good. You'll work directly with me during transition. Valerie turned to Ben. Your UX framework has apparently been foundational to our digital success. I'd like you to head a new specialized UX department, reporting to Olivia but with dedicated resources. Ben's eyes widened behind his glasses as he nodded wordlessly. Riley, your interactive designs have driven significant client engagement. You'll lead client-facing technology integration, also under Olivia. As Valerie continued assigning new roles based on previously unrecognized talents, I realized we weren't being punished. We were being repositioned according to our actual abilities. Finally, she turned to me. Tess, you've been here only 6 months, yet you catalyzed a necessary reckoning. Your design work shows innovation, but your leadership in this situation demonstrates something equally valuable: integrity and strategic thinking. She slid a folder across the table. This is a new position, Ethics and Creative Advocacy Director. You would develop protocols ensuring proper attribution of creative work, facilitate transparent communication between leadership and creators, and build safeguards against the dynamics that allowed this situation to develop. I opened the folder to find a job description with a salary nearly double my current compensation. Why me? I asked, genuinely puzzled. I'm the newest, the least invested. Perhaps that's precisely why you could see what others had normalized, Valerie replied. Sometimes the clearest perspective comes from fresh eyes. The meeting continued for another hour as we discussed practical implementation, timelines, and support systems for team members still processing their experiences. By the time we adjourned, the design division had been completely reorganized, not dismantled, but reborn. As we filed out, Valerie asked me to stay behind. There's one more thing, she said after the others left. How did you access those recordings of Nate, particularly the ones from private executive meetings? The question I'd been dreading. I took a deep breath. I can explain. No need, she interrupted with a faint smile. I already know. I just wanted to see if you'd be honest. My confusion must have shown on my face. Dana contacted me directly last night, Valerie explained. She was quite thorough in explaining her role in preserving evidence. She also mentioned your careful approach to gathering only legally defensible documentation. Relief washed through me. I wasn't sure you'd believe us without irrefutable proof. That's the tragedy of situations like this, Valerie said quietly. When someone is skilled at manipulation, they don't just damage individuals, they erode trust throughout an organization. Rebuilding that is your first priority in your new role. Over the next few weeks, our design division underwent a transformation that went beyond organizational charts. Under Olivia's leadership, we implemented a collaborative attribution system, ensuring every contributor received proper credit. Ben's UX department flourished with clear guidelines for integrated workflows. Riley revolutionized our client presentation approach to highlight team contributions. The most profound change, however, was atmospheric. Designers who had grown accustomed to hiding their best ideas now shared them eagerly. Meetings became energetic exchanges rather than tense evaluations. People stayed late, not from fear, but from genuine engagement with their projects. 3 months after Nate's departure, we gathered for the quarterly design review. The room buzzed with conversation as designers displayed their latest work alongside their names, a simple change with powerful impact. "I never thought I'd enjoy these again," Olivia commented as we prepared to start. "Remember how we used to dread Nate's constructive feedback?" "I used to get physically ill the night before," Ben admitted. "Now I actually sleep." Riley joined us, tablet in hand. "You won't believe this. 3 former designers have applied to return. People who left because of Nate, including Mia?" I asked. "She's first on the list, says she's been following our recent campaigns and wants to be part of what we're building." As the review began, I watched my colleagues present their work with confidence, accepting genuine feedback without defensiveness. The creative output had not just maintained quality without Nate, it had surpassed previous standards as liberated minds explored new possibilities. Afterward, Olivia pulled me aside. "There's something you should see." She led me to her office, where Dana waited with an envelope. "What's this about?" I asked. Dana smiled, a real smile, nothing like the tense expression I remembered from our cafe meeting. "I've been tracking industry responses to Nate's departure. Thought you should know what's happening." Inside the envelope was a printout of a job rejection email addressed to Nate Pike from a prominent design agency. The message was tactfully worded but clear. "While your portfolio demonstrates technical skill, we've received concerning feedback regarding attribution and management practices. Our culture prioritizes collaborative development and transparent credit allocation. This is the 5th rejection," Dana explained. "Word has spread, not through gossip but through proper channels, HR networks, professional associations. He's finding that reputation matters more than his portfolio." "I don't want revenge," I said, feeling uncomfortable. "I just wanted the manipulation to stop." "This isn't revenge," Olivia countered. "It's consequence. There's a difference." She was right. What happened to Nate wasn't about punishment but accountability, something long overdue. That evening, after most had left for the day, I found Ben still working in the creative lab, immersed in a complex wireframe. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said, pulling up a chair. He looked up, adjusting his glasses. "Sure. How are you doing, really? After everything with Nate?" Ben's hands stilled on the keyboard. "Honestly, I'm still processing. For 2 years, I believed I wasn't good enough. That voice becomes part of you, you know? Sometimes I still hear it. I know exactly what you mean. But then I remember the showcase," he continued, a small smile forming. "That moment when everyone saw the truth. It wasn't just about exposing Nate. It was about reclaiming who we are as creators." His words captured something essential that had been difficult to articulate. The showcase hadn't just been about justice, but about restoration. 6 months after Nate's departure, our team received an industry nomination for innovative organizational structure, recognizing our attribution system and collaborative approach. The irony wasn't lost on any of us that the very showcase where we'd exposed Nate had led to this recognition. The night before the award ceremony, I stayed late finalizing our presentation. As I gathered my things to leave, I found Valerie standing in my office doorway. "Working late again?" she asked. "Just wrapping up. Tomorrow's a big day." She entered, closing the door behind her. "I never properly thanked you, Tess." "For what?" "For seeing what I missed. For having the courage to act on it." She sat down across from me. "Do you know what haunts me most? I promoted Nate 3 times. I believed his narratives about difficult team members. I accepted his appropriation of others' ideas because the results seemed positive. He was very convincing," I offered. "That's no excuse. Leaders must look deeper." She sighed. The day of the showcase, when those recordings played, I recognized client presentations I'd personally praised him for, work I'd used to justify his advancement. The weight of her responsibility was evident in her expression. "The thing is," I said carefully, "none of us saw it clearly at first, not even me. It took time to recognize the pattern, to gather evidence, to find allies who could confirm what I was experiencing." "That's why your new department matters," Valerie replied. "Systems that depend on individual heroism to correct injustice are fundamentally flawed. The next day, as our team accepted the industry award, I looked out at the audience, the same venue where we'd confronted Nate 6 months earlier. The symmetry felt appropriate somehow. Later, at the celebration dinner, Olivia raised her glass. To Tess, who risked everything to fight for truth. I shook my head. That's not quite right. I didn't plan some grand crusade. I just couldn't accept what was happening. That's what makes it remarkable, Riley said. You didn't set out for revenge or glory. You just refused to participate in your own diminishment. As conversations flowed around me, I reflected on how we'd arrived at this moment. The truth was, there had been no master plan when I first sensed Nate's manipulation. No elaborate scheme for exposure or justice, just a simple, fundamental decision. I would not allow my work to be stolen. I would not accept being made to feel smaller than I was, and I would not stand by while it happened to others. The revenge, if it could be called that, had never been about Nate's downfall. It had been about reclaiming what he'd taken. Our work, our confidence, our professional identities, about creating systems that made such theft impossible in the future. The most powerful moment hadn't been watching Nate escorted from the showcase in disgrace. It had been the weeks and months that followed, watching designers rediscover their voices, seeing Ben present his framework without apologizing for its existence, hearing Riley confidently defend a creative choice, witnessing Olivia step into leadership with natural authority she'd always possessed but learned to doubt. And perhaps most meaningful, welcoming back those who had left, like Mia, who now led our emerging designers program with enthusiasm that had once been extinguished. This was the true victory. Not that one man had fallen, but that many had risen. After dinner, as we gathered for a team photo, I noticed Dana watching from nearby. I waved her over. You belong in this picture too, I insisted. None of this would have happened without you. She hesitated. I just provided information. You had the courage to use it. That's not true, I countered. You kept those records for years, knowing someday they might matter. You reached out when you saw history repeating. That wasn't just information. It was hope. As the photographer positioned us, I found myself surrounded by people who had transformed from colleagues to something closer to family, people who had shared a difficult journey and emerged stronger. The camera flashed, capturing a moment of genuine joy, not the artificial enthusiasm Nate had demanded, but the authentic happiness of people doing work they loved and receiving proper recognition for it. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop to find an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "Thank you." It was from a designer at another company, someone I'd never met. They described watching our showcase confrontation and recognizing their own situation with a manager who claimed credit for others' work. Inspired by our example, they had documented the pattern and presented evidence to their leadership. Changes were now underway. You showed me it was possible to stand up without being destroyed, they wrote. That speaking truth doesn't have to end a career. It can transform it. As I read similar messages that had arrived over months, from designers, writers, developers, people across creative industries, I understood something profound. Stories like ours rarely remain isolated. They ripple outward, giving others permission to demand better, to insist on fairness, to believe their work and well-being matter. That was the ultimate revenge against systems that depended on silence and isolation to survive, breaking that silence together. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these important stories reach others who might be experiencing similar situations. Share in the comments if you've ever had to stand up for yourself at work. You never know who might draw strength from your experience. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to participate in our own diminishment.